and let's think about movies. We don't celebrate forgiveness.
No.
We celebrate
It's
Clint
John
Eastwood
Wick, vengeance. Yeah, let's
Clint
get
Eastwood
after.
saddling up, putting on the gun.
Yes.
The movie is called Unforgiven, right?
Welcome to the Loving God, Loving People podcast, where we talk about what it looks like to follow Jesus in our everyday lives and how, in the end, all that matters is God and people. Here's today's episode.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic until they actually have to do this thing that we're going to talk about. And the topic is forgiveness. Forgiveness. We've been the last couple of weeks talking about grace, and we've been talking more, Chad, and I think you'd agree with this. We've been talking more about the receiving of God's forgiveness. We've talked a little bit about giving it. Talk to us about forgiveness and how that's the natural design of receiving God's grace in our life, that we forgive those around us. Let's talk maybe a little bit philosophically about forgiveness, and then let's get real practical, because I guarantee you there's a bunch of people listening right now that have something that they need to forgive.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the human race. At some point, humanly speaking, you'll need forgiveness and you'll need to forgive somebody else. C.S. Lewis said this: forgiveness is a lovely idea until you actually have to forgive. Yeah. Well, forgiveness is difficult because it's not fair. Forgiveness is not about earning. Forgiveness is not about giving somebody what they've earned or deserved. There's nothing fair about forgiveness.
Just that statement alone, every kid on the planet understands, well, that's not fair. You know, and that's one of their main arguments when my kids, there's something going on, whatever. Well, that's just not fair. Fair is this ideal that we have in childhood of everything needs to be fair, everything needs to be set right. Even in the Old Testament, it was eye for an eye. That's fair. Tooth for tooth. That's fair. That you were to, whatever was done wrong, that there needed to be an equal opposite reaction to make it right, and then the universe would be at peace once again. Problem is, life doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it didn't work out there. There's only two types of fair in life: the state fair and the county fair. That's it.
That's a good Texas joke right there.
You like that?
Yeah. That's
a little Texas wisdom. Actually, I learned that from a guy out here, older guy. But I always remembered it, and I quote it sometimes to my kids. State fair and the county fair. Yeah, there's nothing fair about forgiveness, which is why it feels unjust, which is why we feel self-righteous in our bitterness, because to not offer forgiveness is to remain bitter. And there's a real problem with that, too, because bitterness won't ever make you better. It'll always make you worse.
And we mask that, to your point, with justice. I'm holding out for justice.
Yeah, I'm good, they're bad, so I deserve to be angry the rest of my life about it, even though it makes me a terrible person and ruins all my relationships. Because that's what happens when bitterness really gets out of hand.
And that's not just so that's a biblical view. That's also, now that there's a ton of research, a ton of science, a ton of funding going into, hey, what actually makes people happy and what makes relationships
you mean
healthy.
The biblical view is bitterness will eat your lunch?
Yeah. And so now science is catching up, and they're doing all these studies and going, man, who lives the longest? Who has the best relationships? Who has the highest satisfaction? Well, guess what? It's not people that have never had anything bad happen to them.
Yeah.
It's people that have learned how to forgive.
Well, and let's think about movies. We don't celebrate forgiveness.
No.
We celebrate
it's
Clint
John
Eastwood
Wick, vengeance. Let's
Clint
get
Eastwood
after.
saddling up, putting on the gun. The movie is called Unforgiven, right? That's what we celebrate. Rambo's going to go kick a little butt.
Yeah.
There's no hero movies wrapped around radical forgiveness that I know of.
Yeah.
Unless you look at real life and you have somebody like Nelson Mandela, right? Martin Luther King Jr. You have people that with passivity and forgiveness accomplish amazing things, right? And we still talk about them now. And I'm not saying I agree with everything about the people I'm mentioning, but people like Gandhi and people like that, who forgiveness was part of their message, those people tend to be real life heroes.
Yeah.
But in the movies, we want somebody to kick somebody's butt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that gets, your adrenaline gets going. That releases some serotonin. But man, there is something, a well-told story of forgiveness that just penetrates deep into the heart. There's something at a soul level that you experience. One of the movies that popped in my head, Peter Zamperini, Unbroken.
Yeah.
I read that book and then saw the movie, and he was a world record runner, whatever, and during World War II ended up in an encampment run by the Japanese, and then it's his journey of wrestling with unforgiveness, addicted to alcohol, and it was actually Billy Graham. I think I'm telling that correct. Billy Graham.
Yeah.
It was at a crusade. He ended up giving his life to Christ, turned his life around, and he ended up forgiving this guy who was the most brutal of his captors. And it's this beautiful story of God's grace. One, first entering into Zamperini's life, and then two, being turned around and given in the way of forgiveness into his captor.
Well, Corrie ten Boom, and we showed a clip from her in the sermon about forgiveness. And she was in a Nazi concentration camp. And then the war's over, and one of the guards in the concentration camp that killed her sister walks into the church service and says, "I'm a Christian now, will you forgive me?" And Corrie ten Boom's thinking, hell no, I'm not going to forgive you, right?
This is no longer a philosophical exercise.
Yeah, after she just spoke on forgiveness. And so she tells that story. I was a little crass there. But she tells that story. I think the reason that forgiveness connects with us when we hear about Zamperini or Corrie ten Boom or Nelson Mandela, people like that, is because all of us want to be forgiven. Philip Yancey said this in his book, What's So Amazing About Grace? And some books I read, and there's a line that just sticks with me. I know you all know I like good one-liners, right? And he said this out of the gate. He said, grace is the best gift that the church can give the world because grace is what makes Jesus so different.
Yeah.
Man, that's true. Everybody wants grace. Because we all know that we need forgiveness. I mean, you pull back the veneer of our nice haircut and fancy clothes or whatever. We all are human beings, naked and shameful before the eyes of God, and we need forgiveness. And so this is why it connects with us. But we like to watch movies where the guy that got done wrong goes and kills everybody that did him wrong. Yeah.
So that quote, what's heartbreaking and so sad, and where just historically, I think, and this is not a statement of anybody who's ever been part of the church, but historically, when the world looks at the church, they don't go, man, that's the place of grace.
Yeah.
That's the place where you experience grace. That's the place where people will love you, even in your flaws, even in your brokenness. They go, oh, that's the judgment place.
Yeah.
That's the law place, right?
Yeah.
And so where have we gotten off course with that, and how have we gotten to now the reputation? We're trying to constantly, even as a church, I feel like a lot of what we do at Sun Valley is we have to break down people's misconceptions about what church is to then build a biblical understanding of what the church was created to be.
Well, Jesus did that. He would say, "You have heard it said, but I tell you."
Yeah.
He'd say, it's not this way, I'm the way. I mean, Jesus had to do that too. I think we just have to do that. What's fascinating when you were saying that's popped in my head, and I hope it's from the Holy Spirit. But there's really three communicators at Sun Valley. It's me, it's you, and then Megan speaks here sometimes as a guest speaker. All three of us have said this line. The message of the Bible is not shame on you, but shame off you. I've said it, you've said it, she said it. And every time we say it, people respond to that because we all think the message of the Bible is shame on you.
Yeah.
And it's not.
And it's what the caricature, if I could call it that, of the church has become in the world's eyes, is that it's the place where people say shame on you.
Yeah.
And that's not reality. That's just the picture that people have in their minds.
I'll quote one verse from Jesus. There are dozens along this line. John 3:17. It's right after the most famous verse in the Bible, John 3:16. But Jesus is talking about himself, and he said, "For the Son of Man did not come into the world to condemn the world."
Which would be shame on you.
But so that the world might be saved through him, which would be shame off you. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if any man is in Christ, they are a new creation. The old is gone and the new has come. That's 2 Corinthians 5:17. His whole ministry is shame off you. So God's desire is not to condemn you, but to save you. God's desire is not to shame you, but to take the shame off of you. God's ministry in our life, and through the person of Jesus by the power of the Holy Spirit, it's a ministry of freedom. Shame is shackled. You're shackled by shame. Shame is shackles. We're shackled by our shame. And Jesus came to
set free.
Break every chain.
There's this, I love how Jesus approaches this, because back to that, the kid in us going, well, that's not fair. Jesus brilliantly, when he's talking about forgiveness, he uses a story. He uses a parable, because when he uses a parable, it takes now the subjective personal emotion out of it, and now we're objectively looking at it, and Jesus goes...
Until you see yourself in
That's
it.
exactly right. But he says it in a way that we would all agree. He goes, okay, so there's this guy who owes this incredible debt to this king, this ruler, and he goes before that king and he begs, hey, can you please just show mercy? And so that king forgives him all of the debt. And by the way, the numbers that Jesus uses, he uses, talents and different measurements than we would use. It would be in the realm of like trillions of dollars, something that no person could ever pay off in their lifetime. And the king forgives that debt. And then that same servant goes to another servant and says, hey, you owe me a couple months' wages, and has him thrown into prison because even though he begged and said, hey, show mercy on me, he couldn't afford to pay back the debt. So he has him thrown into prison. And then the other servants get word of this, and they go back to that king and go, hey, he just had his fellow servant who owed him this tiny bit after you forgave him all of this massive amount, thrown into prison. And so the ruler calls him back in and goes, you wicked servant, like I forgave you all that debt. Couldn't you forgive this tiny debt to your fellow servant? And then he ends up being thrown into prison, and Jesus ends this, and he goes, that's the end of the story. And we go, well, yeah, that was wrong of that guy. How could he possibly keep that debt and hold that over that person's head when he was forgiven trillions of dollars that he said he would work to pay back? The king goes, nah, don't worry about it. And we understand it when Jesus says it about these hypothetical people in this parable.
Yeah.
And then you look at it and you go, oh, that's me. I'm that servant. And so when we think about forgiveness, it's really hard to forgive other people if you don't realize there's a king in the story who's forgiven you. If I just looked at it, if Jesus just said, hey, let me tell you this parable, this story. There was a guy. Another guy owed him money. Hey, he couldn't pay it. He begged, yeah, you owe me money. There's debts to be paid. You got to go into prison. We go, yeah, that sucks for that guy, but it kind of makes sense. But the king in the story changes everything. It changes the whole understanding of that interaction between the two servants. And so what Jesus is brilliantly doing for us is he's going, don't forget, there's a king in your story. And the king changes everything. The reason why we are compelled, motivated, and freed to give is because we've been freed so greatly. Something far greater than anybody could ever owe us. We've already been forgiven that, to be made spiritually alive. And so I love, again, that Jesus did that so that we might go, okay, now I begin to see how I can forgive others.
Well, let's talk about what forgiveness actually is, because I think it's confusing.
And maybe in that, talk about what it isn't.
Yeah. Well, very rarely, if ever, is anyone going to feel like forgiving.
Yeah.
So if you think forgiving someone is an emotion that you're going to somehow come up with at some point, I'm not at a place where I could do it, but one day I'll be there. No, you won't.
Yeah.
Because forgiveness is unfair, and it's always going to be unfair, and there's something in you that's going to go, that's not fair. So forgiveness is a decision. But it's really a decision to cancel a debt. And we get this several places in the Bible. You just gave one parable about the king that cancels the debt, and then the person whose debt they canceled, holds the debt over a much lesser amount. But think about the Lord's Prayer for a second. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. And then there's this line. Forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. So forgiveness is a debt issue. And so let's break that down a little bit, and let's talk about what forgiveness actually is. And so maybe let's do this, Robert. Let's come up with a hypothetical situation.
Okay.
Right? So you can help me with this. Do you want to be done wrong, or you want me to be done wrong?
I'll do wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to come up with the scenario here?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So Chad has a car that I like, and I decide I'm going to take Chad's car. I'm going to just take it for a spin around town. Chad doesn't know it, but he leaves his keys on his desk. I know he leaves his keys on his desk, so I take the keys. I take his car around town, get it all scraped up, use up all the gas, whatever, bring it back, no big deal, go back in. I've done a wrong to Chad. I stole his car. I did damage to his car.
How scraped up is it?
It's pretty scraped up. I mean, it's you're going to have to get another paint job on it, probably a new bumper. Like, I had a lot of fun. I went out in the desert, did some donuts out there. It was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now the car is damaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like there'd be a little bit of trust lost between us. We probably have a conversation.
Well, there's a difference between forgiveness and trust, so we'll talk about trust between us here in a minute. That's by the way, that is a very important distinction. Mm-hmm. There is a difference between forgiveness and trust. The Bible commands us to forgive. That's actually for our good, but we get to decide whether or not we want to choose to give somebody our trust.
Yeah.
So two different things. Make sure we circle back around to that. Will you help me remember that?
Yep.
Okay, so you've damaged my car. Let's put an amount on it. How much damage? Is it my truck?
No, I was thinking the other car, the black car.
The little car? Yeah. Okay. I have this little black car. It's a convertible. It's a 2003, but it's a nice car, even though it's – how many years is that?
I don't know, but I'm going to tell everybody
it's 21
this story.
Years old.
This is a sidebar. This has nothing to do with forgiveness.
Okay.
Chad did all this work and, made it all nice and then sold it.
I know where you're going. I sold the car.
He sold the car and then immediately went, that was a terrible decision. And then you bought it back from the guy you sold it to?
Well, I still have it, don't I?
Yeah. So he did the whole go back, this is a big mistake. Can I buy it back? Now, did you pay more for it to buy it back than what you sold it for?
In fairness...
And Chad makes lots of great financial decisions. I just want to be clear on that too. This just doesn't happen to be one of them.
This would not be an example of one. Okay, we'll just tell everybody. It's a 2003, so it's 21 years old, Lexus convertible. Mm-hmm. It's one of those hardtop convertibles. I bought it from a dentist in Tucson that never drove it. Mm-hmm. I bought it 10 years ago. Remember, it's a 2003, and it had 40,000 miles on it. Phenomenal deal. The tires were flat because it had sat in his garage forever. So anyway, I had to get that taken care of. And so I've driven this car for 5 or 6 years at the time that you're talking about. Had it repainted, made it nice. And then it was getting small because my boys were older. And I'm
hard to fit in the back seat.
I got to do something different. Well, their friends couldn't fit in the back seat. The boys I could manage, but when I like being the dad that has friends over for my boys. I like being the hangout house. Anyway, so I sold the car. And then about 6 months after I sold the car, I was like, man, I love that car. And so another year passes, and Katrina sees me shopping around for one of those cars again because I loved it when the weather's nice. And I sold the motorcycle, so I'm like, can I have a convertible, sweetheart? We had the little bit of money. This was the budget. Anyway, so she says, you should call the guy that you sold it to. It was Katrina's idea, and see if he'll sell it back to you. And so I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm way too embarrassed to do that. I wind up doing it. So I call him, and he said, as a matter of fact, he said, he's divorced. He said, my daughter's coming to live with me, and we can't get the car seat in the back seat. Mm-hmm. It's too small. He said, I will sell it to you. Well, this was COVID when you couldn't get a car.
Yeah.
So all the prices were up.
Yep.
And so he calls me back. He says, I feel weird about telling you this, but have you looked at the current, what your car would sell for? And I said, yeah. He said, I don't need that, but would you give me this much more? And it wasn't bad. Mm-hmm. I said, yeah. I'll do it. And I went and got my car back.
So
Still had my garage code. And you know how you have the 3 buttons on your visor? Yeah. Well, I didn't do the normal button. I did a different one. And
so this guy could have had a house, too.
He could have came and gotten my house.
All right. So that car's the one I took, and I just wrecked this paint job that you paid all that money and worked so hard to get back. So there's some emotional connection. That's why I picked that car. Now everybody has the context.
All right.
All right.
I'm so
back
glad
to forgiveness.
Blessed everybody.
So what is forgiveness, Chad?
Blessed you with my stupidity. You're welcome. Okay, so there's a debt that's been incurred. Let's say it's $5,000 in damage, right? Which would mean, Robert, you owe me
$5,000.
$5,000 because you did me wrong. You didn't ask. You scratched the car, and then you brought it back without doing anything. You owe me $5,000. So this would be forgiveness. I tell you what, Robert, I love you. Everybody makes mistakes. I got dumb stories. Obviously, we just told one, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to forgive you the debt of the $5,000. That's forgiveness.
And that's on paper. That's clean and simple. The challenge with relationships.
Well, specifically, it's literally, I'm going to say it again. It's saying you don't owe me anymore.
Yeah.
That's forgiveness.
You're releasing me of the debt, which I clearly owe.
You don't owe me. I'm deciding you don't owe me.
Now, say in another scenario, I say hurtful things to Chad. Here's the problem with that scenario. You can't put a dollar amount on it.
Yeah.
That most of the things that we have to forgive, it's not as easy as take it to the auto shop and they'll give you a bill and say, this is exactly to the penny what it's going to cost. It's, man, that hurt, and that person owes me because they hurt me, because they wounded me, but I can't put a dollar value on that. And so what we do is we try and hurt somebody back. Well, who says, well, now it's even? That was exactly $5,000 worth of hurt back in the form of words. So much of life is so much messier and so less clean than just it's $5,000 of damage, which is where we get stuck in these constant back and forth. Well, you hurt me, now I get to hurt you. Well, I think you hurt me more than I hurt you, so I'm going to hurt you back a little bit. That scale never evens out.
Yeah.
And so that's the complexity of relationships when we talk about forgiveness, is it's never as clean and neat as I scratched up your car.
Well, if you're running around and you tell people, yeah, I don't know why I'm angry all the time, I'm just a hothead. If that's you, if I can be so bold, you need to grow up, and being a hothead is not God's will for you. Why are you a hothead? There's a good chance you're bitter. Who owes you something? And then let's point it out. If you need to forgive somebody, the issue is a debt. What do they owe you? It could be that they betrayed you and they lied to you, so they owed you the truth. They didn't give it to you. It could be they said they were going to be there and they weren't, so they owe you. It could be they're your parent and they were supposed to do this as a parent, but they never did that. They owe you. So one of the things that you have to think about if you're going to forgive somebody is, what is the actual debt?
Yeah.
Some of us, again, we're running around angry. We don't know why. You're going to have to think about why you're angry.
Yeah.
There's probably a root of bitterness there that's grown into anger, and now you're a hothead.
Yeah.
And by the way, just think about that. I'm a hothead. That means that's affecting all of your relationships.
That's right.
And you can trace that back to a root of something. So what does the person owe you?
Could be your parents owe you a different childhood.
Yeah.
It could be they owe you words they never spoke that they should have spoken. And it could be that somebody owes you, because of they robbed you of something. They robbed you of the marriage that you feel like you deserved. And they did something, whatever. They owe you for whatever that is. And the more specific you can be, the better you'll actually be able to forgive them. If you just go, that person, there's some hurt there. And so we kind of forgive in a general sense. I forgive that person. Get specific. What do you forgive them for? Because the more specific you are, the deeper that healing will actually go and not leave roots of that undealt with. And so that would be my recommendation. What have they done? What do they owe you? And get really specific with that.
That's really good. So bitterness says you owe me. So what do they owe you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talked about forgiveness is not a feeling. When you've been hurt, when you've been wronged, if somebody jumps out and scares you, you're either going to fight or flight, right? There's either going to be a reaction. The emotional reaction is you're either going to want to fight that person, run away, or sometimes freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. Forgive is not a feeling that you're going to have. You're not going to go, I should forgive that person. That's not going to be your natural feeling. It is a decision. It is a choice. And so you figure out, what do they owe me? And you choose to forgive it. You choose to cancel that debt. And it's going to feel like, I'm supporting injustice in the world by forgiving it. Talk about the difference between going, I'm just going to, no, it's no big deal, and going, okay, God, I'm going to trust you with this thing.
Yeah. So this is the hard part. Let's go back to the metaphor about my car.
Yeah.
So you did $5,000 damage on my car. That's what you owe me. And so, okay, he owes me $5,000, and I say I'm going to forgive that. I'm going to cancel the debt. The problem is the damage is still there, and that's why it feels so unjust. So what I have to do at that moment is I have to go, who's going to pay for the damage, right? Now, if you're a believer in Jesus, understand this about what Jesus did on the cross. And if you're not driving in your car and you can close your eyes for a second, I'm going to invite you to do that because I want you to take in what I'm about to say, because it might be different for you. When Jesus died on the cross, He died to cover all of your sin and all of the sin done unto you. Can you receive that? I'm going to say it again. When Jesus died on the cross, he died to cover all of your sin and to cover all of the sin done unto you. So who pays for that damage? Well, it's already paid for. It was paid for by Jesus. So here's the thing. If you have something big to forgive, what you do in partnership with Jesus is as you absorb that pain, you just give it to him and let him pay it. So you're kind of absorbing it because the damage is still there. You still got to deal with that damage. But with that damage, you're partnering with Jesus so you can experience the fact that it's been covered. If you stay bitter, you will carry around that debt for the rest of your life. And here's the thing, and I've learned this from experience. That debt that you're carrying around that somebody owes you, you owe me, you owe me, you owe me, it accrues interest. And suddenly you start realizing everybody owes you. And eventually you shut the door relationally in all kinds of different ways because that debt is accruing interest in your other relationships. Bitterness never made anybody better. Bitterness just breaks you on a soul level. Why? Because the debt is too freaking heavy. And so what we do is we allow Jesus to free us from our own sin and from the sin done unto us. He can break every chain. But it's so difficult because there's an absorbing of the pain. There's the reality that the damage has been done. And then now in partnership with Jesus, I'm not going to make you owe me anymore. I canceled the debt, but me and Jesus still got to deal with the damage. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just because I feel like somebody's listening going, okay, so I just let people do wrong or ignore whatever's happened. And so I want to address that here a little bit. One, if somebody has committed a crime, so in my scenario, that'd be called grand theft auto. But if there's a crime that's committed, it's okay to contact the authorities and go, there's been a crime committed. And there are people that want to, I mean, that's why we have police. That's why we have our legal system and all of that. And so,
here's the problem in the church, because people will do a crime and, oh, we all do things that are wrong. Yeah, we all do things that are wrong, and some people do wrong and need to go to jail. Mm-hmm. That's real.
Yeah.
So, yes, we deal with it on that level.
Yeah, so we don't just ignore if there was a crime. Please talk to authorities if there's a crime has been done. There's also, and you told me to bring us back to this, it's not that, okay, I've forgiven this person. Now I'm going to give them the keys to the car whenever they want.
Yeah, yes.
It's not the restoration of trust. Trust is something totally different.
Yeah, so let's break that down. So to forgive is to cancel a debt. Mm-hmm. And so you have to, first of all, what does that person owe you? Mm-hmm. Let's acknowledge it. Let's talk about it. Let's look ugly reality in the face. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, I'm going to choose to forgive. So I'm going to say, you don't owe me anymore. I'm going to cancel that debt. Mm-hmm. And then as I choose to cancel that debt, I got to deal with the damage that the debt incurred. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do that not with the person who did me wrong, because they can't make up for it or pay for it anyway. I deal with that with Jesus, and he empowers me to forgive. And that could mean I got to go to counseling. That could mean I got to go to Celebrate Recovery. It could be that in my partnership with Jesus, I just need help and coaching on how that works, right? Mm-hmm. So what do they owe me? I'm going to cancel the debt, and then I'm going to close the account. Mm-hmm. Now, closing the account can look one or two ways. If you want the relationship to continue, you close the account. You choose to give that person your trust, because nobody can ever fully earn your trust. Mm-hmm. You decide who you're going to trust all the time. Yep. Trust, in the end, cannot be earned. It can only be given. And so you choose whether or not you're going to give that person your trust or not. Closing the account would be, I'm going to continue the relationship, and I'm not going to bring this stuff up anymore. Mm-hmm. I've closed the account. Mm-hmm. Or it could be, I've closed the account and I'm not going to continue the relationship anymore because I don't want to do that. Yeah. All right. So here's what Robert and I would tell you. Forgiveness in the Bible is a command, because it's for our good. There's that famous quote, forgiveness sets a prisoner free. And I realized that the prisoner was me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Louis B. Smedes, I think. There's a ton of people. Corey Ten Boom, I think, uses a
get
similar.
Credit for it. Yeah. Yeah, but it sets you free, and that's God's will for you because he loves you. And if it's like it just feels unjust, you let Jesus take care of the justice, and he will. He will wipe out all evil for all time. In many ways, he's already taken care of the justice, but he will completely, and so you can trust him with that. And then you get to decide on close the account, whether it's I close the account, continue the relationship, I close the account, and do not continue the relationship. And frankly, there's some that you don't need to continue the relationship. If you were abused as a child, if it's somebody that continues to verbally abuse you, if it's not a safe situation.
Don't put yourself in harm's way.
Yeah, if it's somebody that ripped you off business-wise, you don't ever have to do business with that person again. Just depending what the situation is.
And to say what you would say when it comes to trust. Trust is one of those things that it's lost quickly, it's gained slowly. It takes time to build trust.
That's right.
And so it could be, hey, there's an offense, something wrong was done, and that bank account, there's not a lot of trust credits there. But I'm going to cancel this debt account over here, and then I'm going to choose if I allow this account to build back up, and trust is built slowly over time. Yeah.
And you get to decide who you want to trust. But forgiveness is a supernatural thing. And there are things that happen to us in our lives that are seemingly unforgivable. But by the same token, God's really big and he's really powerful. And you'll be amazed what he can do in your heart. And I will say forgiveness is a process. It's really easy to say, what do they owe you? Okay, cancel the debt. Okay, close the account. All right, that's easy to say.
Yeah.
But it usually takes a lot of time and effort and work to do.
And a lot of reminding yourself that you've chosen to forgive that person, because those feelings will come back.
Oh, man, it's like walking through a cobweb in the woods. You ever done that?
Oh, yeah.
And you think it's sticky. You think you got it all off you, and then you get back to camp, and you're like, I still got it on me. And then you wake up the next morning,
across your face,
I still got it on me. Yeah, it's like that. But it is possible. Okay, so let's just think about this. You're going to deal with the pain of it anyway. To go the bitter route's to go by yourself.
And to stay in the pain.
To go the forgiveness route is to go with God.
Yeah.
I'd rather have God.
And you're going to go through the
with
pain.
Me on it.
Forgiving is painful. To go through the process of forgiving somebody, you will go through pain, but that pain is a lot shorter lived than the pain of bitterness, and it keeps you from poisoning every other relationship. Yeah. And so I would choose the pain of forgiveness.
Well, and the pain with God will change you for the good.
That's right.
So one of the things I always say, pain will change you for the good if you choose that. Yeah.
Okay, we are way past our time, but this is a big topic,
well,
and I wanted us to talk about your bad financial decision with the car.
Well, let me just say it one more time. Pain's going to change you either way.
Yeah.
Right? It can change you for the good, but you got to choose that. And so let's go with God. I will tell you personally that Jesus has worked in my heart to forgive some pretty big things that have happened in my life. And I would say, if I have any maturity at all, or any depth at all, or any understanding of God's grace at all, it came through that journey with Jesus. All things, this is Romans 8:28, all things work for the good. It doesn't say all things are good. It says all things work for the good, for those who love God and who are called according to his purpose. And so even if you've got something horrendous and it's so heavy and you need to go to counseling and you got to get help, if you will lean into Jesus and you will walk with him, he will even use that for your good. And I'm telling you as somebody from experience. So I love you more than that. He loves you. If you're part of Sun Valley, you got a church that loves you and will walk the road with you because it's his desire to break every chain in your life. And it's his desire for you to be free. Robert, will you pray for us?
Yeah. Father, for those who, this is not a philosophical conversation. There is a very specific debt that is owed them. There is a person that has been in the forefront of their mind for this entire podcast. I pray that Holy Spirit, you would guide them through that journey of identifying what exactly is that debt. They'd be able to identify what is it that's owed to them. And I pray that with your help, with you absorbing the debt, not just of what they've done, but what's been done to them, that they would be able to choose to cancel the debt, to close the account, and when those feelings come back, to remind themselves that they've already made the decision. Maybe they even need to say out loud in prayer with you, they don't owe me anymore. I choose to be set free through forgiveness. And I pray that they would experience a freedom in their life that maybe they have not experienced because they've been holding on to this bitterness. And I pray that through forgiveness, you would set them free. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for watching this week's episode of the Loving God, Loving People podcast. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and click the bell so that you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in this conversation, we'd love it if you like this video, leave us a comment, and even share it with a friend. Doing that will help more people meet, know, and follow Jesus. And lastly, you are always welcome to join us each week for one of our services right here live on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.